Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your floral world builder host, Megan Angus. And this week we are going to be discussing Ostara season, waning moon in Capricorn, lunar week 8. What the fuck is up, heathens? It's been a minute. Yes, it has. Um, to rewind briefly, last week, approximately, we had our Ostara class. If you haven't watched that yet, go check it out. We are going to be talking a lot about the things that we discussed in that class over the next several weeks as we move through this first month of spring. So go check out the video, go check out the class. It's on YouTube. It's also, in theory, distributed through all of the podcast platforms that offer video. It's in all those places. It's also on my website. And if you want the book or the calendar that we talk about in class, the calendar is, what I'm referring to with all of the holy days that we talk about here in the podcast. Folks that are subscribed to my Patreon at $9 and up can get access to the Patreon bag of holding, wherein we will find the workbook for every Sabbath, the calendar for every Sabbath, the slides, all of the reference materials that I use for the classes, as well as whatever other little fancy special goodies I happen to put into the folder. This time I threw some digital spell work in there for you guys, for your phones and for your PCs. You can use them as backdrops there. There's a few other backdrops in there as well. So yeah, there's that. Let's see, what else do I want to cover before we get into the meat of it all? It has been a minute. Let me talk about that for a second. I intended to do at least one podcast in the last couple of weeks. In fact, when I went to start my notes for this one, I found the notes that I had written out for the last one that I intended to do, which I believe was going to be the Virgo new moon or Virgo full moon that we had, 10 days ago or so. And I never did it. And, this was a time period where I had to take my own advice and put myself in timeout. I love doing this podcast. I also have allowed it to become a pretty insane, gnarly beast of a project. And here at the, as we moved through the very last hours and days of winter, and as we step into these first hours of spring, I'm really allowing myself to renegotiate my deals with myself, and renegotiate my demands that I put on myself. And so this is going to be the last episode of this podcast. No, I'm kidding. Calm down, everybody, relax. This is not the last episode. I love doing this podcast, and I want to continue to love doing this podcast. So it is going to change. As I've said before, I think it's still in the description a year later. This is an experiment, and I am allowing myself to have this space as an experiment, and I am stoked that you guys are all here participating in the experiment with me. I have a lot of stuff in my chart that really wants me to concretize things and make stuff as difficult as possible with as many steps as possible. And then I have to adhere to that law forevermore. And so, as I said, in the last hours of winter and these first hours of spring, I've really allowed myself to go into negotiations with myself around those ideas and see how much I can destabilize that in myself and see how much of that I can let go of. And so all of those things really sit very nicely with the lunar work that we're going to be doing this week. Witchcraft, right? Anyways, yes, the podcast going forward may be a little bit different, might be a little bit shorter every week, but me doing that, me allowing these changes to come in, is part of what's going to keep it so that I can keep doing this every week. I also have stuff going on in my personal life. My mom is getting older. And she definitely needs me to be in her life more. Um, and the building that I live in is going to be sold, is going up on the market, and I may have to move out of my home that I've been in for 12 years. So, 2022, right? Just another year on planet Earth. It's a little wild these days. So, all of that said, I am trying to approach this project that I really love doing, um, in a manner that allows it to take whatever shape it needs to take from week to week. So, thanks for coming along with me on this ride and this trip and this experiment. And let's get into it, shall we? I think that's enough BS. I have something in my notes about Tarot Circle. Yes, patrons are going to get a Tarot Circle this month at some point. I also realized there's 6 days left in this month, but damn it, we're going to make it happen. Patrons get to attend a Tarot Circle for free every month. That's everybody $1 and up. And it's an hour or hour and a half workshop where we get together and we bullshit about tarot. Sometimes it's stuff directly related to the season that we're in. Sometimes it's just talking about whatever we want to talk about tarot related. We're building a really cool little community in Tarot Circle, and I'm really stoked on it. So that's also happening here. And then next month, I may run the 6-week Welcome to Tarot workshop again. Whether I do or I don't, it will not pop up again until fall. So either I'm going to do it now and then I'm not going to do it again until fall, or I'm not going to do it again until fall. So patrons have first dibs to sign up for all my workshops. And then folks that are subscribed to my newsletter, my irregular newsletter that I send out whenever I feel like it. But that's completely free. You'll even get a discount code when you sign up for my newsletter. And then folks on social media and everybody else gets to hear about it and have access to the sign up pages for that stuff. So let's get into what we have coming up for us this week, shall we? All right. All right, if you want to know more about Ostara and Ostara season, I have a big old page up on my website that has an overview of the holiday, a bunch of other pieces written about sacred days that happen within Ostara season, as well as a bunch of pages or a bunch of pieces of writing focused on tarot that we work with during Ostara season. In particular, the Emperor. I have a written piece on the Emperor card. I also have a free 2-hour live stream or 2-hour video class on the Emperor card and the Tower card. I have a piece on the Tower card, and I also have 3 big written pieces on the 2 of Wands, 3 of Wands, and 4 of Wands, which are the minor arcana that we work with as we move through Aries season. You want to know more about all of that stuff? Sign up for my irregular newsletter. And if you are looking for guidance on how to work with all of the energies that we are discussing in this podcast, in these classes, and in these pieces of writing on my website, you can always book a tarot or astrology reading with me as long as my books are open. Y'all have been going crazy with that. Hi to every person that I've ever encountered who decided to get a reading from me in the last 6 or 8 weeks. Hi. So if you can get into my books, you come and get a reading with me. Let's talk about it. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you to all of my motherfucking patrons. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this. And if you are feeling especially heretical, you can give it a thumbs up. Ratings are the delicious ambrosia of algorithms. So people love a click. There's links for everything in the description of this podcast. On with the show. Okay. Ostara season witches work. What are we focusing on? What are our big themes that are running in the background of Ostara season for us? For witches, pagans, and heathens all over the planet, it is holy days, archetypal figures, ritual work, spellcrafting work, symbolism, all focused on initiation, setting intention, and shifting from dark to light. And our global themes that we see in holy days, past and present around the planet, focus on fertility, virility, initiations, and rejoicing the return of life in this quarter festival. Um, and I just want to say that I am sending peace and love to all of the people of Earth who are dealing with or fleeing their warring governments. War is a racket, y'all, and it's a bunch of fucking bullshit. Okay, let's move into March 24th. Uh, this is a Thursday, and so this is our kind of our preamble before the weekend. This is focused on a waning half moon in Capricorn at 4 degrees. And the only thing aspecting this moon is the sun. And anytime we have the waning half or the waxing half, the moon is square to the sun. So what's up with that? Ultimately, our metaphor for that is that the fruit that was on the vine, that blossomed, the fruit appears at the full moon, the fruit ripens at the disseminating moon, and now here at the waning half, the fruit begins to wither. And so our big question to ourselves during any waning moon moment, and we get one a month, right? So it's not rare at all. We literally get to check on this every 30 days or so, is what needs to change? What needs to change in spite of or because of success or failure? Our waning moon work can often feel like it's bringing us into focusing on what's going on in my process, how far in am I, and what's not working, what's not producing results, what's too hard, what did I like, what is it, what's not working here? And often it's a what's not working from a standpoint or a viewpoint of failure or lack or didn't quite make it or it was too much or whatever. But I also want to encourage you to look at systems that seem to be just fine, that seem to be working well. Belief systems, financial systems, community systems, whatever. And also think to yourself, what things here might I need to end because they're successful? And I'm clinging to them out of fear of letting go of something that's successful in exchange for something that might be even more successful. That stuff. And when our moon is in Capricorn in particular, it's calling into question our attitudes, our beliefs, and our physical world practices around our finances, our money, our physical world resources, and the legacy that we are building with our behaviors, or the legacy that we are eschewing with our behaviors. Are we building a legacy of being known for our, charitable efforts and our mutual aid efforts, or are we building a legacy for being known as, really miserly or, really selfish or very greed oriented? And here's the thing with all of that stuff. When it comes to physical world resources, all of us get uptight about it. I don't care who you are. You have to literally be an ascetic, like homeless living on the street, devoting your entire life to God to not give a shit about physical resources. Everybody does. Everybody does. So if this stuff is bringing up like, ugh, for you, it's okay. It feels like this, I think, for everyone to some measure, right? Especially when it's stuff like, what are you doing around charity? What are you doing around mutual aid? What are you doing around your generosity in this economy, right? In this climate, in this day and age? Who am I to be up your ass about you need to share more, you need to give more, all of that stuff? Maybe you do, though. Maybe that's why this moment feels uncomfortable, because you're like, ugh, I could actually do more. Ugh. Or perhaps you're feeling like, I would totally do more if I could, but I can barely pay my rent. What are you talking about, lady? So this is a moon that might feel like it has a lot of friction with it, that has a lot of like, ugh, with it. And it's bringing up this whole conversation around charity, giving, sharing, mutual aid, and the fears that stuff stirs up for you around scarcity, longevity versus destabilizing ourselves, all of that stuff. And here's where the work gets real sticky. If you were to express your fears or your concerns around charity, around mutual aid, around the idea of generosity and giving, if you were to express your fears, your quiet internal opinions on that stuff, do you think you would be ostracized from your group? Do you think that your community, your family, your collection of friends would be like, whoa, I didn't realize you felt like that about it. Wow. And is that adding to the pressure? Is that causing you to be performative with this stuff? I know, right? It's always fun, right? I take a couple weeks off and I'm just right back in whooping your ass with a bunch of like really uncomfortable stuff. I know, I know. I'm on brand. What can I say? But this is what this moon wants from us. This moon is like, hey, I really need you to have a conversation with yourself around this. Where are you holding yourself back? Where do things need to be changed here? Because maybe our viewpoint is too big. Maybe our viewpoint is too small. Maybe we are doing things to please the group, but are not actually in alignment with our own personal ethics. This moon is going to bring that stuff up, and it's going to become a little more focused and pointed as we move into the week. So prepare for that. Okay. With our waning moon in Capricorn for our lunar body work, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring bones, hair, nails, teeth. These are all the body parts ruled by Capricorn. As I like to say every week on the podcast, I am not a medical doctor. I am a doctor of the cosmos, aka just some lady on the internet. Please check with your trusted health advisor if you are wanting to incorporate any of the lunar body work into your healthcare regimen. And for our plant body work, when the moon is in a waning phase in Capricorn, we are maintaining or breaking down old containers, old borders, old fences, old gardening beds, old structures. Metaphorically and physically, right? Literally that. Which of these garden beds would it actually behoove me to get rid of and rebuild or replace with something else entirely? This is working okay. Could something be even better here if I let go of my old ways of thinking? That stuff. Okay, and so our holy days for March 24th. We have from our Yoruba friends and ancestors the return of Oshun. Oshun is a great mother goddess who oversees rivers and other waterways, and she is coming back after her trip through winter in the lands of chaos. From our Slavic friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Komadici. This is very similar to Maslenica that we talked about in the Ostara class. It's another big springtime festival, initiatory rites for the gods and goddesses that are changing shape and coming back from the lands of the dead here to spring. We have the Feast of the Archangel Gabriel from our Orthodox Catholic friends and ancestors. And we also have Heimdall's Day from our Norse friends and ancestors. And we're going to come back to talking about the Archangel Gabriel in a couple of days. Yeah. But the other thing that's happening here on March 24th and running more or less through April 10th is the Megalesia. This is from our Phrygian friends and ancestors, aka also our Roman friends and ancestors. And the Megalesia is the Kybele or Sibyl and Attis cycle. I have a huge piece on my website about the Megalesia, ancient sparkle party. People got free key during this, and there is so much really cool symbolism woven into this holiday. We're going to talk about it a lot in this podcast. But the Megalesia was the life, death, and rebirth cycle for Attis, who is the consort of the goddess Kybele or Sibyl. A lot of people pronounce her name Sibyl. I pronounce her Kybele because her name is also related to names like Kybele and Kybebe and Kubeya. And so there's clearly a k kind of sound at the beginning of her name. That's on purpose. Sibyl or Kybele is a world builder. She's a great goddess of the Phrygians. She basically was the universe for Phrygians, and then stuff happened within her. Attis is her son and her lover, and is always depicted as this youthful male slash androgynous character. And androgyny, as well as shifting genders, changing genders, and messing with or playing with the idea of gender and the energies that we get from gender, is a really big element of her megalesia and her festivals, because her priests or her priestesses start out as priests. They start out as the Sali or the Gali priests that come into devotion of her and service to her for an amount of time. And then when this festival would roll around every year, some of those priests would choose to go through a rite of initiation, and they would release their male gender and take on a female gender, partially through castration. And, obviously that is not a necessary step for plenty of people who transition, but it was part of this ritual for these people. And it was huge, and it was really well known, and it was a major element of the festival. And after this moment would happen, the priests who were now priestesses, the Melissae was their new name. They would change from being the Gali priests into the Melissae, which is connected to bees and honey, and it goes there. They would run out of the temple. They would pour out of the temple in this moment of kind of ecstasy, or ecstatic, very extreme state of physical, mental, emotional, intensity. They would run out into the streets, and they would run into the homes of the people that lived around the temple, and the women in the homes would wrap them up in their clothing. And so then they would come back out of the houses dressed as women, wearing whatever the traditional female garb of the day was. And they were forevermore from that point known as the Melissae. And so this happens over the course of several days. There is this huge rite, a massive tree is cut down, a pine, in fact, an evergreen, dragged into the center of Rome, erected in front of Kybele's temple, which is massive. And an effigy of Attis is crucified on the tree. I know this sounds vaguely familiar. There's a variety of other religions that do this. Crucified on the tree, is killed, and then brought back to life, is resurrected, reborn. In the meantime, there's all this really wild stuff going on with Kybele's temple and her effigy, and it's taken to, there's a, magical bits and whatnot that are taken down to the river Tiber, washed ceremonially, dressed with violets, brought back to the temple, all of this stuff. And then after a big long week of all of this like heavy duty ritualism, the Ludi Megalesia begin. And as if you've been listening, the Ludi are Roman games that basically were just to keep the populace happy. And and so then the games kick in for another, week to 10 days or so, where there's games on the steps of the temple and food and drink and gambling and plays. And it's a much more festive ceremony after that. The first week is like, this is ritual, get the fuck out of the way. This is important, we'll kill you if you try to, hinder this situation. But then after that, it was like, oh, no, it's all fun and games. We're just having a good time. So that whole thing is what is sort of rolling in the background of our entire week. And as we roll into April, and the more I researched about Kybele and the Megalesia, the more it's always ahas for me. It's always these massive epiphanies. But the more I came into this really profoundly different understanding of the maiden, who is the form of the triple goddess that some pagans and witches and heathens work with here at springtime. The idea is that the crone has transformed forward, as I like to say, into the maiden. The maiden will turn into the mother will turn into the crone, and the crone next winter, as it connects to spring, will turn back or forward into the maiden. And so I've always thought as the maiden, as this very curious, naive, like, I don't really know any better. I'm just frolicking. I'm having a good time. I've never been here before. What's that smell like? What's that feel like? What's that taste like? A lot of that. And we want that. We want that energy. But also, the more I learned about Kybele, seeing her in her great throne with lions on either side, um, really made me think about the goddess Durga from Hindu mythology and belief. Durga rides a lion or a tiger. She's depicted both ways. She also has a holy day at this time of year during Aries season. And I just thought it was a very interesting entity slash energy to bring in the face of what I normally would have thought of as the maiden, which is this very, again, naive, curious, playful, fun, la 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 kind of vibe, right? Like hee hee. And then you have Durga that's like, no, I am literally a weapon built out of all of the weapons of the gods. And I am here to tell motherfuckers what is up. I am here to push my will into the world. And then we have Kybele or Kybele over on the other side, who's like, I am a world builder. Like, literally, worlds are built on top of me, because of me, in me, of me. Kybele literally wears a crown that is a cityscape or a wall. Like, she has architecture on her crown as an indicator of, like, no, I build civilizations. This is my jam. And bringing all of that energy together for me is so, so potent. I feel like it sits much more strongly with some of our more progressive images of Aphrodite or Kor or Proserpina or Persephone when we're thinking about their underworld journey that they take, and the old Greek stories around that of Hades or Pluto coming up and abducting Persephone and sexually assaulting her, right? Like all of this really graphic, horrible stuff. And then when we get all the way through the myth, it's Demeter's opinion and the god's opinion, but nobody ever asks Persephone what she wants or needs in that. But when we dig into some of the older versions of the story, we see that it's not Hades, it's Hecate, the crone. And so now it's Persephone choosing to go into the underworld and learn about this other aspect of herself. I talk a lot about this in the class. Go listen to that. But my point is, we have versions of Persephone, Kor, Proserpina, this goddess who's like, we have versions of her where she actually has quite a bit of agency. She has quite a bit of empowerment. And that version of this springtime goddess plus this energy, Durga, Kybele, makes so much more sense to me when I think about a goddess like Ishtar, who was Venus, but a goddess of war, right? She's Venus, the goddess of love, but she's also a world builder. She's also a civilization builder. So, where I'm going with all of this is, yes, we absolutely want to embody and engender this curious, playful, silly, adventurous spirit that the maiden does embody. But I think, like a lot of goddesses that are learned about through the filter of patriarchy or the kyriarchy, we have neutered the maiden. We have been handed a version of the maiden that is incredibly neutered and not powerless, but not powerful, right? She's playful. She's not a world builder. And I think that she is, in fact. I think that the maiden version of the goddess is an entity and an archetype that we have kind of been getting wrong. We've been leaving out parts, very important parts. And I think that in this season, it's lovely that, well, as usual, it's lovely that everything is lining up the way that it is. But this week, and as we step out of March and into April, I think we have this really beautiful archetype, with, represented by this holy festival from thousands of years ago, saying, hey, be playful, be naive, be adventurous, be curious, have fun, but also you're building worlds. You are literally laying bricks. So take yourself seriously. That doesn't mean don't have fun. That means treat your fun like holy work. Treat your holy work like fun. Both. And understand that in your playing and in your adventurousness and in your curiosity, you are also taking on the mantle of world builder and world chooser and world definer. So, I'm so stoked that this holiday is here. I'm such a fan. Okay, as I said before, big old piece on my website. In fact, I even have a bunch of. I made a Google map that has holy sites that definitely were dedicated to Kybele or may have been dedicated to Kybele throughout what was ancient Anatolia, now modern day Turkey, as well as down into Greece and Italy. Um, I actually have some sites on there, I think, marked in Iraq and Iran as well, and Afghanistan. So, yeah, because her worship spread over thousands and thousands of miles. She was kind of a big deal back in the day. So I love that we have this massive goddess, mother, world builder energy in the background of everything else that's going on this week. And we're going to touch back on that as we talk about the rest of the stuff happening this week. All right, March 25th, this is a Friday. Our waning moon is still hanging out in Capricorn, so we're still getting to do all of that super fun work. We have no astrology of note for this day. So, directly to the holy days, we have from our modern pagan friends and ancestors found in our modern Wheel of the Year calendars that we find all over the internet. We have Lady Day. And this is very much a day dedicated to the goddess in any and all of their aspects, literally across the board. We also have Annunciation Day of Mary from our Catholic friends and ancestors, Crane Day from our Swedish friends and ancestors, but this is more of a modern holiday than an ancient one. And we also have Arbor in Trot from our Roman friends and ancestors. Okay, so scooching back just a little bit, here we know that we are in this week with this background of the Megalesia and this great celebration of Kybele, this massive mother and world builder. And what did the Catholics do? They put the Annunciation of Mary right here. What this day is for Catholics is the day that the Archangel Gabriel, who we just talked about the day before, comes to Mary and says, sis, you're pregnant. Um, and you should name him Jesus. And Mary's like, what? So that's happening today. We gotta love the Catholics for that kind of placement too. Here it is right after spring equinox, right? This is, of course, in the surge of that spring energy. And when is the goddess, really, right? The Virgin Mary, she's a form of the goddess. When is she finding out that she's pregnant? Right here at spring. She's going to have her baby at winter solstice 9 months later. There you go. So really cool stuff with that. Coming back to the Crane Day thing is literally like storks or cranes. So the delivery of youth, the delivery of the new energetic year. And they are thought of as like a symbol of spring, that spring is returning and all of that stuff. And then coming down to that last holiday from our Roman friends and ancestors, Arbor in Trot. This is the day in the Megalesia where the great evergreen tree would have been selected, cut down, dragged all the way into the center of Rome where Kybele's massive temple was, and erected next to the temple. And then Attis would have been crucified on that tree. March 26th, this is a Saturday, and we have the waning moon hanging out in Capricorn and then entering Aquarius at 5:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day and the next day for everybody else around the planet. For our lunar work, I'm going to talk a little bit, how do I want to say this? Okay, here's what I'll say about this is that work that we are doing in Capricorn around questioning our opinions, our beliefs, and our behaviors around resources and our generosity or our insecurities around our resources, all of that stuff. As the moon moves into Aquarius, that might become a much more heady, abstract conversation for you. Kind of moves out of the body and into the brain. And it's sort of like, what's going on here? What am I thinking about? On this same day, we have Mercury sextile Pluto. Mercury, of course, an air planet, Aquarius air sign. We've had the moon in Capricorn. This is where the moon, or where Pluto has been hanging out. And so as the moon moves into Aquarius on this day, it's crossing over Pluto because it's at the very last few degrees of Capricorn. So that Pluto sextile Mercury thing is kind of in the mix here. And that mix can be funky if we're not paying attention to ourselves. We can get really obsessive with our thinking and really like drill down on like, I've got to solve this puzzle, OMG. And if we are present with ourselves, it could just be a, wow, I'm really curious about this. I want to dig deeper. I want to know more. I want to think about this a lot. So as the moon moves into Aquarius, also, I want to think about this a lot. So be aware of where are you thinking intently and having a really like purposeful internal conversation on this subject, and where are you starting to switch into autopilot and maybe get a little obsessive in your thinking, or like spiraling out in your thinking, or like really twisting yourself up into some tiny circles and loops of thought. That's where you want to kind of say, okay, I need to put myself in timeout. We're done with this subject for now. We'll come back to it later. I'm getting weird. That thing. Okay. When our moon is in Aquarius for our lunar body work, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the legs, especially the knees and the ankles. And for our plant body work, we are wanting to do harvesting, pest control, disease control, plowing or aerating the soil, and weeding for below ground support. So again, as if you've got a yard, goddess bless. If you've got windowsill boxes, cool. If this is just your indoor plant collection, cool. This is a good day for all of that stuff. Our holy days on this day. From our Slavic friends and ancestors, we have Plowing Day. This is just like the plowing days that we've talked about that come in January for a lot of groups. This is part of the Komeditsi / Maslenitsa holiday, spring holiday bonanza that's happening for a lot of Slavic folks. But this is a day of blessing the plows, cutting those first furrows into the ground, all of that good stuff. From our Zoroastrian friends, we have Kordad Sal, and this is the birth of Zarathustra. And so, again, coming back to the global themes that we see at this time of year of the birth or rebirth of light, sun, solar power sources in different pantheons and belief systems. Zarathustra, definitely a big deal for our Zoroastrian friends. That is their big god. And Zarathustra also is sort of a god, sort of a great prophet. I don't know that it's exactly correct to refer to Zarathustra as a god, but pretty magical, very potent, and a return of light and solar energy there. Also from our pagan Celtic friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Mabon ap Modron. This is absolutely connected to Mabon, as in Mabon, as in the fall equinox holiday. Here at Spring Equinox, we're celebrating this deity, and this is a mother-son deity combo as well. So again, that energy of mother and son, or mother and child, mother and world builder, mother and consort. That is this other kind of masculine, but kind of androgynous energy at the same time, repeating over and over again this week. And then from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Tubalistrum number 1. And this is a holiday dedicated to either the horns that are used at wartime, or the horns that are used in a variety of different ceremonies throughout the year. And this is either a day of like refurbishing them and bringing them back into service and like, hey, let's polish the horns. Or it's literally a ritual dedicated to honoring the horns themselves. It's not a lot of information about it, but I thought it was a cool thing. Especially because, Gabriel, blow your horn. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. March 27th, this is a Sunday, and we are still hanging out with our waning moon in Aquarius. So again, a little reminder, don't get too lost in the intellectualization of your bullshit. Lovingly, respectfully, quit it. Okay. The stuff to note for this day, I think the big thing here that's happening is that Mercury enters Aries on this day. And Aries, of course, is the sign that really rules or oversees Ostara season, in my opinion, anyways. Um, by the time we get to Taurus, we've only got a few days left, and then Beltane happens. So, in my opinion, once the sun has entered Taurus, we're kind of in the preamble for Beltane. So, I really only think of Ostara as basically lasting about a month, and that month is the month of Aries. So, anytime we're in Ostara season and we have planets traveling through the sign of Aries, for me, it really emphasizes that. Now, every year during Ostara season, we are absolutely going to have the sun travel through Aries. So our sense of self kind of gets a little adjusted and a little, added on moment there of Aries energy. And then also, we can kind of expect that Mercury and maybe Venus as well is probably also going to be, I should say, probably also going to be in Aries during quote unquote Aries season when the sun is there, because Mercury and Venus hug so closely to the sun. So they're either going to get there a couple of days or weeks before the sun, they're going to be there at the same time, or they might be there a couple days or a couple of weeks after the sun is there. So sometimes the sun has moved into Taurus by the time that Venus is cruising into Aries. But generally speaking, they're all sort of traveling in a pack. Okay. What are we doing, though, with Mercury in Aries? What does that do? When Mercury is in Aries, we are less concerned with objective viewpoints and explanations, and we are more concerned with reaching a decision quickly. So, Mercury entering Aries can speed up our communications, speed up our talking, speed up our response time in communications, but it can also speed up our expectations in communications. And so we might find ourselves getting a little impatient when it comes to communicating with other people, either getting impatient around getting our ideas across, or getting impatient around, oh my God, it's been 3 minutes. Why haven't they texted me back yet? What is the that thing. Our thoughts and our ideas are pioneering, adventurous, visionary, and we tend to speak more spontaneously and directly with the planet of communication in bold, assertive Aries. So watch that too, right? You may be like, no, let's just cut to the chase. I've been holding back on saying this. I'm going to go ahead and just say it today because Aries is like, meh, I have no time. Let's just get right to the heart of things. And can be extremely direct, can be very, very blunt sometimes. And so you may find yourself in your communication over this next 3 weeks to a month while Mercury is hanging out in Aries, traveling through Aries, being a little more blunt with people, being a little more direct with people, and also maybe being a little more spontaneous in what you're saying. So be present with yourself of like, oh, do I mean that when I say that? Is that the truth? Or am I just saying words right now? What's happening? It is a time of quick, possibly impatient or even hurried decisions, mental competitiveness, and quick or even perhaps defensive or combative responses. So, yes, arguments. And here's what I will say that I absolutely love about Aries energy. It can be combative, it can be defensive, it can be argumentative. It also lasts about 5 minutes. So you may suddenly find yourself in an argument with somebody, and just as fast, you're both fine. Like you both reach a conclusion and you're like, oh, did we just have an argument? Are we okay? We are? Okay, cool. Good. That was good. Our communications are direct. They're very straightforward. It's very honest, uncomplicated. But again, we may be getting into the insensitive or blunt area with that stuff. And we want to take in information, right? That's Mercury. Mercury's like, give me the data, give me the facts, give me the knowledge, the information. We may really want to take in information through personal experience. So I don't want to read about it. I want to go do it. That is a very Aries attitude of like, you handing me a pamphlet is doing nothing for me. I need to go on the walk. You showing me a picture of the thing is not doing it for me. I have to go to the thing. I need to be there myself, smell it, touch it, see it, be in the environment, all of that. So again, Aries season, right? We know that Mercury is rolling through here at this time of year every year. Mercury in Aries during Ostara season is really saying, I can't just think about that. I need to go get it back into the world and touch it, smell it, get it on me so that I can have that piece of information as I go forward into this year. Really, really want that. Okay. We have just 2 holy days for March 27th this year. We have from our UK friends and ancestors, Mothering Day. This is a cultural / Christian day that really celebrates mothering. It's very similar to like Mother's Day in the United States. But again, quite interesting timing having it here in this particular week, isn't it? And then also from our Roman friends and ancestors, the continuation of the Megalesia. And on this day, we have Dies Sanguinis, or Sacred Night. And this is the day that the Gali priests would undergo their great sacrifice and transition for themselves and for the great Idaean mother, Kybele. And then would have, again, left the temple, been dressed by the women in the houses around the temple, rushed back into the temple, and then they are cared for like newborn children in the temple. They're swaddled, they are fed milk and honey and a little bit of bread. They are cared for by, the medical staff of the temple. And blessed and honored with this massive transformation and sacrifice that they have made, and this movement, this dedication of their life to this new way of life, and this new form of themselves. It's really beautiful. It's really incredible, in my opinion. I think it's really incredible. Okay, yeah, that's all I want to say about that for now. Let's move on to March 28th. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me, to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand, because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. March 28th, the weekend is over. This is a Monday, and we are greeted at 9:20 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else, with a balsamic moon in Aquarius at 22 degrees. This moon is being aspected by a lot of stuff. It is conjunct Venus at 21 degrees, Saturn at 21 degrees. So yeah, Venus and Saturn are also conjunct on this day. This whole mess is also vaguely conjunct Mars at 16 degrees and square the nodes at 24 degrees. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. So first off, let's talk about what are we doing with a balsamic moon. Let me bring you back to our moon imagery metaphor that we've been working with. At the full moon, the fruit appears. At the disseminating moon, the fruit is ripe. At the waning half, which is where we're starting the week, the fruit begins to wither. And now, here at the balsamic moon, we are taking that fruit and we are turning it into vinegar. We are putting it through the distillation process, AKA, what did we learn from this last piece of our process? At the waxing or the waning half, right? We're having a friction moment. We're like, okay. Things aren't working. What's not working? Or things are working, but what might be holding me back that I'm clinging to that's working, but could be better, right? We're having like that moment of like deciding, what needs to stay, what needs to go. And now here at the balsamic moon, we are claiming that stuff that needs to stay and we are distilling out the most potent pieces of information, the most potent elements of experience and archetype and all that stuff that we have gleaned from our last month of lunar process. The balsamic moon is always these last few days of the lunar cycle, and they really are incredibly potent for reflection. Where am I at in my process, and where do I want to go from here? There can be a real tug from the future as well. Like that new moon is right around the corner, and that new lunar process is right around the corner. And especially with all of this Aries energy and Mercury just stepping into Aries and everything else, like spring is like, let's go. And so this balsamic moon in particular might really have a let's go kind of vibe to it. So just, chill. But also, let's look at some of this astrology with this moon. A moon conjunct Venus, generally kind of social, kind of cheerful, might be doing some like, home chores kind of a thing. The one thing I would say about a moon conjunct Venus is watch your money, pay attention to your spending. But the moon is also conjunct Mars, and it's also conjunct Saturn, and it's also square the nodes. Saturn, side note, is square the nodes a lot this year. They just are kind of like in this like perpetual argument. And so when we bring Saturn into the mix and we bring Mars into the mix, now there's a little bit more impatience. We might be a little more irritable around things. Saturn might be feeling really lonely, and really like Venus, starts out our day that's like, oh my God, I'm going to clean the house. And by 2 hours in, Saturn is like, all I do is live to serve and clean and work. Why is my life only labor? And then Mars is like, and I want to argue and fight about it. And I'm going to pick at stuff and like be mad at you for no reason because of this thing over here. So this might just be a tough day. This might be a day of like tantrums, of like just having no patience for it. Like, I'm going to go do the dishes. Screw you. Like, that kind of a thing. Right. And Saturn also like, is really excited to bring like guilt in, right? And Saturn's really excited to bring in stuff like alienation and loneliness. So just try to be present with yourself on this day. This day might be kicking off a week of feeling like, ugh, why am I stuck in this? I want something different. I'm impatient. I want the changes now, that stuff. And in those places when we're feeling that kind of frustration, I'm always going to try to encourage you to step back from yourself, be loving, be patient, be curious with yourself. As I always say, if you need to put yourself in timeout, put yourself in timeout. Go for a walk around the block. Say to your colleague or your lover or your bestie or your neighbor, can I answer your question tomorrow? I'm tripping today. Can I get back to you in a text later on? I'm having a moment. What's going on? No, I'm fine. I'll deal with myself. I'm okay. Or maybe share, maybe talk about what you're feeling. But given the other stuff that's coming up this week, it might be a bunch of funky stuff that you don't feel comfortable sharing with other people. And I understand that. So just sit with yourself. If you can't get out of that negative headspace loop, go for a walk, watch some trash TV, do what you got to do to shake yourself out of the bullshit. And also where it feels healthy and where it feels safe for you, sit with the yuck that comes up, sit with the funky stuff that comes up. What this might really ultimately feel like, because of the square to the nodes, is being pulled towards something on the horizon, but not being able to define it. Like, I want something out of life, I guess. And some of that might feel like I want to want something. I want to feel passionate about something, and I don't feel passionate about anything. And I know that that is also an uncomfortable place. It's always enviable when we see folks in our lives who have determination and they know exactly who they are and exactly where they're going and exactly what they're doing. I've heard that it's very satisfying. I have no idea what it feels like to do that myself. So, if that kind of stuff is coming up for you this week, be kind with yourself. Tell yourself, I'm getting impatient. Let me be patient with myself. Let me be loving. Let me be curious. Where can I laugh at myself that isn't humiliating myself? Where can I laugh with myself and I'm not laughing at myself in a derogatory way, right? What can we do to kind of lighten up Saturn and angry grandpa attitude in our lives? And also recognizing I want something and I don't necessarily know what it is. What do I do about that? Maybe that's some of the work that's going to come up for you in this coming lunar cycle after the new moon that we have next week. Maybe, maybe not, but this might be a really potent place for you to ask yourself some questions. What am I dissatisfied by? You know, why do I need to want something in my life? Why does that feel appropriate for me, right? It might help you define what it is that you're actually looking for by also helping yourself put words to why do I feel like I need to want something? Why do I want what I want and all of that, right? All of that. You know me, I'm always a big fan of journaling, man. I'm always a big fan of talking to yourself about this stuff and going back and reflecting on it and being like, wow, those were some wild words that I chose to use to describe this. I'm a huge fan of the places where it gets really irrational, where it gets really like off the rails and you're like, whoa, that's probably not anything in reality. Why am I choosing this vocabulary to describe this? Because that's what it feels like internally, right? And then we're moving based from that place, that unconscious place. So all of our lunar work really at the end of the day is about digging that stuff up from the internals and bringing it up into the light and letting it speak, letting it get some air, letting our conscious mind grok it and see it and be like, oh, wow, this is happening. I'm doing this. I'm saying this. Okay. I'm feeling this. Okay. So as a remedy to all of this heavy stuff, what I really recommend is spending some time thinking about the future and imagining the most positive one that you can. Reading about people who are making the future, who are building worlds, and who are specifically doing it in the most ethical ways, the most progressive, cutting edge ways, the most environmentally sound, humanitarian-ishly sound ways. Science that is helping the world. No bad news. Do not read about bad news stuff for like 2 days. Just give your brain a break. No doom scrolling. Posy vibes only, bro. Posy vibes only, sis. Posy vibes only, family. Okay? Okay. Just a doom diet. That's all I'm asking. Just a little doom diet. That's it. For our lunar body, we already did this already. We're resting, relaxing, and nourishing the legs, especially the knees and ankles. For our plant body stuff, we're still harvesting, doing pest control, disease control, plowing and aerating the soil, and weeding for below ground growth. And then that night, the moon is going to enter Pisces at 9:31 p.m. Pacific Standard Time later in the day / the next day for everybody else. So what I will say about this, we're going to talk about what Pisces is actually doing on March 29th. But what I will also say about this is this. For this new moon piece that we have here this week and the beginning of next week, while the moon is dark and still very small, this is the best time of year in the northern hemisphere to see an astronomical phenomenon called the zodiacal light. I am not going to go into explaining exactly what it is here. I talk about it in the class. You'll find even more information if you search that term online. But basically what it is the plane that our planet orbits on is a relatively popular plane other planets are sort of here with us, and stuff and meteors and dust and all this stuff is sort of here with us. And at this particular time of year, because of the tilt of our planet and where we are in our orbit in comparison to the sun, yada, 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 the sun lights up all of this dust that's in this plane where our planet travels, and we can see it in the night sky as this triangle shape. And I have never personally seen it, but I have lived in cities pretty much my entire life. So this is another night sky phenomenon that you got to get outside of cities. You got to go to a place where the sky is very, very dark, and obviously you got to have clear skies. And it's fairly dim. So this is something that you're probably not going to see immediately. It's probably going to take a couple of hours for your eyes to adjust, and then you're going to see it and think, I'm going crazy, and then you're going to see it and go, there's a giant pyramid of light in the sky. Oh, okay. And it's the photos I've seen of it are awesome. Really, really cool stuff. Okay. Just wanted to say that about this time of year as we move into this new moon. Okay. And the only other thing that I have to say about March 28th is from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the day of Hilaria or Hilaria. And this is the day of rejoicing after the really epic and intense events in the Megalesia the night before. This is the day of rejoicing and joy and rejuvenation and sort of coming back to life. Attis comes back to life from the lands of the dead. All that good stuff happens on this day. All right. Let's move on to March 29th, shall we? March 29th. This is a Tuesday. Our waning moon is still in Pisces. And so while our moon is hanging out in Pisces, we want to rest, relax, nourish, support, or otherwise restore the legs, but especially the ankles and the feet in particular. So as I say every month, when we move through the Pisces moon, yes, your pedicure is a holy act. Yes. Okay. And for our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, grafting, flowering bulbs, biennials and perennial flowers, and vegetables that bear crops below ground, like onions, carrots, potatoes, etc., etc., etc. That's all our supporting plant work that we're doing on this day. Our holy days for March 29th, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Al-Ghanib. Now, this fixed star is actually found in the constellation of Pegasus, which is directly above Pisces in the sky. And this star currently marks like the foremost tip of one of the wings on the Pegasus. And so it kind of means like wing tip or something like that. But when we dig into the older versions or older meanings for this name, it is also referred to as the second spout, the lower spout, or the rear spout. And in my opinion, connects very strongly to some of the terminology that we see in fixed stars in the constellation of Pisces. So I wonder if the stars of Pisces didn't actually stretch up into what we now think of as Pegasus. Not that Pegasus hasn't existed for a long time. That's an old constellation. It's been around for a very long time. But as we know, through time, what stars are connected exactly to what constellation has shifted over the millennia, partly because those stars move in the sky in comparison to the constellations, and partly because the constellations have been drawn differently through the eras. And so what we think of as Pisces now is not necessarily what we thought of as Pisces 5,000 years ago. So I'm just curious about that. I think it's very interesting. Lots of cool stuff with Pegasus about making the mistake of overestimating your capacity and making the mistake of underestimating your capacity / making the correct decision of recognizing exactly what your capacity is, which I think is a very important piece of work for us to do in a week kicked off with a Capricorn moon. Like, what am I capable of doing in the physical world? Where am I saying I can do too much? What are my motivations around that? Where am I saying, I can't do that, but I could actually do more? What are my motivations around that? And where is the sweet spot where I'm sitting in my agency and I'm doing exactly how much I can do, and no more and no less. That stuff. Okay. Also on this day from March 29th through April 30th, from our Irish friends and ancestors, we have Old Cow Days. And this links us back to an old myth about a brindled cow who, at the very end of March, started to complain that the nice springtime weather had not shown up yet. And basically, it's like Kybele or the Morrigan or the spirit of winter itself is like, I'll show you, bitch, and brings on so much gnarly weather for the first 3 or 4 days of April that it kills the cow. So there's supposed to be a metaphor there about like, don't complain about the weather or you'll make it worse. But if you are a fan of winter like me, go outside and bitch about the weather real loud. Like, this stupid weather is so hot, it's cold. Why is it so cold? Because maybe you'll get some more cold weather. If you are excited about the warm weather coming, keep your mouth shut. Or you're going to get a cow killed somewhere. Keep your mouth shut. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, continuing the Megalesia Kybele Attis cycle, we have Requieto, and this is the day of rest. So we had this really intense festival moment, right? Really intense actions 2 nights ago. Yesterday was the Hilaria, the day of rejoicing. Today is the day of rest and relaxation. And also on this day, from our Babylonian friends and ancestors, we have the feast of Ishtar, coming right back again to this archetypal image of this great mother who is a world builder, who is a warrior, who is strong, brash, impatient, very Aries energy connected with this stuff. And I know we're like, wait, Aries is Mars. What are you talking about? Well, my friends, when we dig back far enough, don't forget, Mars was a god of agriculture and Venus was a goddess of war. Don't forget. Don't let the patriarchy get you twisted, my friends. So here we have, yet another goddess from this region of the world, and this time period, very loosely speaking, who is, another version of this idea of these great goddesses who, upon whom the reality is built. Gotta love it. All right, let's move on to March 30th. All right, that brings us to Wednesday, March 30th, which is the last day of this lunar week. We still have our waning moon hanging out in Pisces, and these are really the last hours of this lunar cycle before we have our new moon in Aries next week. And so, in whatever ways are possible for you to do so, I really encourage you to take some time out and be alone, be still. You might do some prayer, you might do some magical work, but a lot of witches and magicians and heathens and pagans in these last hours of the old lunar cycle do nothing. They don't engage the energy. They let the energy just rest. They kind of let themselves be at rest. And I know we all have lives and life on earth is real hectic right now. So if you can't take a 5-day retreat, yes, correct. But can you take a long bath with the door locked? Can you go for a drive out to somewhere by yourself and go hang out? Is there a way that you can create some solitude for yourself, some stillness, a moment of rest, that kind of thing? That stuff. If it's at all possible for you to engage that space, I encourage you to do so. Okay. Our holy days for March 30th, we have from our Babylonian friends and ancestors the birth of Bau, B-A-U. This goddess is a big deal. This goddess's name connects us to Baba, as in Baba Marta or Baba Yaga. Her name connects us to Kybele. Her name connects us to Kybele as Kybele. So seeing the birth of Bau here from our Babylonian friends and ancestors is like, yes, absolutely. Bau is an earth goddess, a primordial creator goddess. She is also a world builder and a being upon which worlds are built. And she is the regenerative energy that's found in the last standing grain of the wheat fields. So she really connects to a lot of those crone goddesses that we've been working with as they transform forward into this world builder maiden goddess that we are hanging out with here at this time. She is usually represented by grains and cereals, rye, barley, oats, poppies, but she is also often depicted as a serpent. She is known in particular for her really powerful healing abilities as well. Um, and so, one of the other really cool things that we have at this time of year, even though we have officially stepped into spring, the equinox has happened. That's a solar event, right? There's nothing we can do about that. Um, we still have this small portion of days here in the final days and hours of March that are dedicated to the old goddesses, that are dedicated to the crones, that are dedicated to the goddesses of last year, the goddesses that oversaw the completion of the harvest last year, because we are at the beginning of those energy cycles now. So there is an acknowledgement of the cyclical nature of the goddess meets herself on the road over and over and over again here in this form. So here, as we are pushing the seeds in with our youthful vigor, pushing the seeds of potential into the earth at springtime, we're acknowledging the goddesses that are going to oversee the ripe grain that ultimately is going to come from this seed, right? The ultimate result of this process that we're just beginning. What a fucking powerful metaphor. Like, woo, right? Sitting with yourself, watching yourself push seeds into the earth, witnessing the potential, knowing, there's a process that's about to unfold and we're not going to know all of the steps of it, and also containing within you the finality of that and the completion of that process. And already I have no idea what could happen. I know everything that could happen. I contain all those potentials within me. Who knows which one is going to come up to be grown and produced this year? So powerful, it's so good. It's so good. Okay. Okay. Also on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, again continuing in the Megalesia Kybele cycle, we have lavatio, and this word means to wash or to bathe. And so this is actually not for the priests or the followers. This is when the sacred items would be taken out of the temple, brought to the river Tiber, washed, blessed in the waters of the river, and then brought back up again. Again, remember, we have this really massive festival, this really key element here of magical items being taken down to the river. And at the same time, at the beginning of this week, we're kicking it off with acknowledging a beautiful river goddess, Oshun, in our Yoruba friends and ancestors practices. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Also, on this day, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we may have had the Dies Natalis of the Temple of the Moon. Now, this would have been dedicated to Diana. I checked this in a couple of different sources, and yes, it is marked as being here. So, why I'm surprised is, one, it's the last day of the moon. So, what I'm wondering is if this wasn't part of a multi-day festival that celebrated the end and then the new moon. Is this part of a multi-day festival that took place at several different points and acknowledged the dark moon, the bright moon, the full moon, the waxing, the way, like the god Diana in all of her forms, kind of a thing? But I'm also surprised that this is happening dedicated to Diana during the Megalesia. The Megalesia wouldn't have necessarily fallen at this time of year every year, because of the lunar calendar. It would have adjusted backwards or forwards, but it does always kind of fall here as I'm thinking about that. I'm like, no, that actually would be here. So I think it's interesting that these two holidays fall on the same day. Either way, this is a lovely day for doing moon work, moon worship in particular. Again, not such a super great day for doing magic or ritualism, but as I said before, prayers, that kind of stuff, spiritual practices that don't call on you to do a lot are really appropriate here at the end of the lunar cycle. Okay. To wrap it up, my friends. Um, our lunar phases are running from Capricorn through Pisces technically, but really it's running through Aries because that's going to be our new moon. And so we have a little mutable energy in here, but really we have cardinal signs kind of showing up to put a cap on winter and to start the spring and start our spring energy cycle. Um, for our astrology this week, I don't know. What do we have? We've got some moons doing some really crazy stuff. What else do we have? Let me check my notes. Oh my god. Can I get to them? Maybe. Yes. Here we go. Okay. We have Mercury in Pisces, sextile Pluto in Capricorn at 28 degrees on March 26th. On March 28th, we have Venus in Aquarius conjunct Saturn at 21 degrees. On that same day, we have the North Node in Taurus, sextile Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees. On the 30th, we have Venus in Aquarius square the North Nodes in Taurus at 23 degrees. And on March 27th, we have Mercury entering Aries. Next week, next month, no, next week, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have a new moon in Aries, and this is our first new moon of spring. So I will say this as well. This week, even though we have stuck a toe officially into springtime, if you have anything from winter that you need to wrap up energetically, put a cap on, put a pin in it for now, kind of a moment, this is the week to do that. This is the week to say, okay, thanks, but we've done all that we can do here, and we're going to move on to something else in another form. And then also next week, we have Mars conjunct Saturn in Aquarius and Venus entering Pisces. If you love the podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this, and if you are feeling especially heretical, you can give it 5-star ratings, 5 being an especially occult number. Thanks, guys. This was fun. I hope it was good for you too, baby. And we will talk again next week. If you haven't watched the Ostara class, please do get filled in. This year, I talked about some stuff. Last year's class, I talked about different stuff because there's no way to get it all in one class. So, Ostara spring season information aplenty on my YouTube channel and my website. And if you want even more, subscribe to my Patreon. And if you want even more, sign up for a reading with me to find out what all of this stuff is doing in your personal life. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's it. Go enjoy the day. Go enjoy the goddamn day. All right, heathens. Blessed be.